something clearly changed.
I admire him so much, Russell, as a writer, and that's why I'm here doing Doctor Who. It's because of Russell.
You'd all love to see Christopher come back as the Doctor, right? See? Now, what would have to happen for that to become a reality?
Sack Russell T Davies, sack Jane Tranter, sack Phil Collinson, sack Julie Gardner, and I'll come back.
The new episode of Doctor Who is out, and while Russell T Davies doubles and triples down on some of the recurring themes I've pointed out in this new series, there's actually a moment in this episode that would seem to indicate that he knew full well this season was not going to go over well when he wrote it.
That shit twist at the end makes him a complete and utter hypocrite. We'll show you how.
On the surface, Dot and Bubble is taking a page from Black Mirror, and I've definitely got no problem with that. In fact, if you take out the subtext, I would say this is the most Doctor Who-like episode of the entire season thus far.
And more coherent than Jodie's era.
Right, you are, Doge. There were times in that era where it was like Technicolor barfing all over the walls just to see what would stick. Even some of the editing was incoherent.
Some of this is my fault.
I'm glad that in my last video I went back to highlight the daughter from the episode Boom.
The girl who was an allegory for the audience obsessed with social media.
Because we get that again, but in this episode, more literally this time, confirming my theories about Boom. Even the title, Dot and Bubble, highlights this. It's a world of entitled white people who literally live in a social media bubble that surrounds their heads. They're so blind to the outside world that they have no idea that they've been invaded by alien creatures intent on eating them. The Doctor and Ruby's only way of getting through to these people is to contact one via their social media bubble, Lindy Pepper Bean. Of course, Lindy willfully ignores what the Doctor and Ruby are trying to tell her, instead blocking them so she can just listen to the vacuous things being said in the various echo chambers that bring her joy. Once they're able to finally get through to her and show her the actual danger she's in, Lindy has to turn off her bubble and is depicted as too stupid to even be able to walk without this thing.
Geez, Davy's not even trying to be subtle.
Right. Now, bear in mind, we have this poor girl who is desperately trying to get out of the city without being eaten, but because she's a proxy for the audience, that creates a problem for Davies, because how would we normally feel for a character in that situation?
Empathy, compassion. We'd be rooting for her.
And we can't have that. So what does he do? Without spoiling it, he has her do something so selfish and evil that it absolutely obliterates any empathy you might feel for her. Davies despises his audience, so we must join him in despising this audience proxy.
What a cold manipulation. But wait, true believers, it gets worse.
She eventually gets to where the survivors are meeting up, and upon seeing the Doctor and Ruby in person, she walks away and tries to ignore them as if they aren't there.
Like the audience is ignoring Doctor Who now.
They confront Lindy Pepperbean, and she lies through her teeth about what happened, making us dislike her even more. The Doctor suspects something, but he doesn't call her out. After a brief discussion with others that establish that her mother is dead, a conversation she deals with in the same childlike manner as the daughter from Boom, the Doctor offers to take everyone on board the TARDIS to find them a new home. And Lindy, annoyed that he's even still standing there, replies,
"We couldn't travel with you because you, sir, are not one of us."
And because we're not racist, we were incredibly confused. But this is about more than racism.
Davies knew what he was doing was not going to be accepted even as he wrote it. This audience proxy is rejecting this Doctor to his face, just like the ratings are reflecting now. On the first viewing, I only saw it as a rejection of Ncuti, but as the scene went on and I realized what was going on, I had to rewatch it again, and I was just floored. Davies has come out and publicly confirmed it is indeed about racism.
And if we don't like these new episodes, or him, that must really be the reason.
Like most of the episodes this season, the surface level viewing is fine.
Ish,
but the more you stop and analyze and think about what's going on in any given episode, the more
angry,
disheartened I get. I didn't pick up on those overtones the first time through because I'm not that way. I see people first. I've never complained that, according to canon, the Doctor should be old and curmudgeonly. Who's this David Tennant or Matt Smith? I just want people to write good stories and do a good job. That's all we want. My feelings on Jodie Whittaker can be summed up like this. The stories were such utter garbage, I don't feel like I had enough decent information to really judge her performance accurately. Colin Baker, the 6th Doctor, is a perfect example of this. He had some real shit scripts to work with, enough to make his version of the Doctor rather dislikable. But his stories with the Big Finish Doctor Who audio series bring us a whole new Doctor, the Doctor we should have had. He knocks it out of the park. I feel like the same thing is happening here. Ncuti was hired to be Ncuti when he should have been hired to be the Doctor. Once in a while, including in this final scene, I get these little glimpses of, if you just play it right, like any actor hired to do a specific role should, I think the potential is there for true greatness. And ironically enough, that is exactly how you deal with racism. Instead of calling attention to it or playing the victim, the best thing you can do is just come in and do an outstanding job. That is what shuts everyone up. While there's no race component, in 1989, there was a huge controversy at the time in hiring Mr. Mom to be Batman. He came in, kicked ass, and everyone shut the hell up.
I'm Batman.
That is how it's done.
So this episode is like what Kathleen Kennedy is doing this week.
Exactly. At the time of this recording, The Acolyte hasn't started airing yet, but she's already laying the groundwork of how it's going to fail because we're all ists and phobes.
They can't even bring themselves to speak positively about their own projects.
You're right. That's exactly what's going on here. Are there some people out there who dislike Ncuti for that reason? Probably. But what about the people who aren't racist? You're still pushing them away. What about the kids who watch this and don't see racism either until you show it to them? This is a kid's show, after all. Instead of teaching acceptance as Star Trek did, you run the risk of teaching hate. Davies made a big deal about taking Davros out of the wheelchair so we don't associate disability with evil.
Time and society and culture and taste has moved on, and there's a problem with the Davros of old in that he's a wheelchair user who is evil. And I had problems with that, and a lot of us on the production team had the problems with that, of associating disability with evil.
By that logic, sir, you just wrote an episode that essentially paints white people as evil. Is that the message you want to send to children? You don't want the child in the wheelchair to feel maligned as evil, but it's okay to make a little white child feel that way.
Ironically enough, Davies is in his own bubble.
Because that's the key point here. You write an episode about racism, but you don't teach any proper lesson about it. Oh, and by the way, those of you who have been following these Doctor Who breakdowns on this channel are keenly aware that the Doctor is not the hero of these stories. He doesn't solve the issue. Last week in 73 Yards, neither the Doctor nor Ruby knew anything had even happened to them at the end of the day, so he wasn't the hero then. And in this episode, he tries his best to save these people, but gets rebuked. The season is almost over, and the Doctor has yet to be a hero in any of these stories. By the way, if you're angry about getting this kind of quality from your BBC licenses, because I know I've got a lot of British viewers out there, or Disney Plus viewers, don't worry, you can always spend more money by seeing the final 2 episodes of the season on the big screen. Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Sack Russell T Davies and I'll come back.